In a recent video, I showed you our entire analytics setup for our software as a service. And basically the way it works is we are using 3 different parts in our data pipeline. We have Meltano, which is a combination of different tools that allow you to extract data from your different data sources, then to load it into your data warehouse. In our case, that's just a Postgres database, and then run transformations on that data using dbt in order to get the data into a more accessible shape. You can then use a tool which is called Metabase in order to draw some graphs and dashboards from this transformed data. And in this video, I want to show you exactly how you can run all of this yourself using free and open source tools, Meltano, Postgres, and Metabase. So we will host all of that on Sliplane. Sliplane is a cloud provider that allows you to run your workloads on European infrastructure, and we can use the services to run Meltano, to run the data pipeline. Then we can spin up a managed Postgres instance for our data warehouse, and we can also run Metabase over there in order to draw these graphs and dashboards. So without further ado, first thing that you need to do is create an account on Sliplane, click on Get Started with GitHub, and then an account will be created automatically using your existing GitHub account. If you don't have a GitHub account, you can create one for free as well. And it basically only takes a minute until you're ready to roll. So next up, I will open a code editor. In my case, I'm using VS Code right here. And I'm also using Claude, an AI agent that helps us to simplify the setup. I already installed Claude on my system, so if I run Claude in a terminal, Claude is getting started, and I can use the agent in order to help me with the setup. Now, if you're not using a coding agent, of course, you can also go through each of these or through all of these steps yourself. I would recommend using one because it drastically simplifies everything. And the first thing that we are going to do is we will connect Claude to Sliplane. So we will give Claude access to Sliplane in order to spin up the environment, so we don't need to touch anything right here, and it makes the setup very simple. If we go back to the Sliplane homepage, and right here on resources, we will find the documentation. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can find this MCP section, and on getting started, and I will scroll down again, we can find the instructions in order to connect our Claude Code instance to our Sliplane account, and then Claude can act on your behalf and they can execute commands in Sliplane. Now be careful here. You don't want to give Claude all tools and randomly all access. So make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you review everything Claude is doing, and keep in mind that Claude can also run destructive commands. So maybe you also just want to do this for the setup and then you disconnect the MCP again, or maybe you want to keep it alive. But keep in mind, there is some risk to it. Claude can run destructive commands on your Sliplane account. They can delete servers, they can delete your data, they can cause a lot of damage, and you need to know what could happen. I will just copy this Claude MCP add command. Then I will go back into my code editor. I will close Claude for now, and I will just paste in the command that I just copied. Then I hit enter, and it tells me edit HTTP MCP server with URL. And then if we launch Claude again, and I will type in /MCP, it tells me, or it shows me, there is a new MCP server, but it needs authentication. So I will hit enter and authenticate. Then it opens a new window in the browser, and it asks me, do you want to authorize Sliplane MCP to access your Sliplane account? And I will grant access to Sliplane. Then I can close this window, authentication successful, and then we are ready to get started. In order to get started, I will tell Claude, initialize a new Meltano project. use a example data pipeline that syncs a random CSV file to a Sliplane managed Postgres instance. And this is going to take a minute or two, and we will quickly wait for what is going to happen. And one thing to note, we are running on manual mode right now, so I do have to say yes a bunch of times, but you can switch to auto mode by pressing Shift and Tab until it turns yellow down here, and it tells me auto mode is now on. So I don't need to confirm every single step. Again, there is some risk to it. Claude can run destructive commands, and just keep that in mind. Now it's going to ask me what kind of Postgres instance I want to create. And right here it's asking me create a Sliplane managed Postgres instance is a billable resource. So take note, if we go to sliplane.io and let's go to the homepage, go to pricing, and then you can find an overview of all of the prices. We have app runtime that we can use to run the Meltano pipeline. If we scroll down a little bit further, we have managed Postgres, and there you can find different prices. We can find different billing cycles. Just take note, if Claude is acting on your behalf, it can create resources that are paid. So just make sure that you know what is going to happen. And as another side note, I already created this account. I already attached a payment method. This command will fail if you did not attach a payment method. So one thing that you need to keep in mind, go to Sliplane, go to billing, and then you can manage your billing data and add a payment method right here. So let's quickly go back into the terminal. I will accept this. I will just use the starter, which is the smallest instance type, and it's also asked me for the region. Of course, you can tell Claude to use a different region or a different instance type if needed. So let's quickly wait for that to finish, and then I see you in a minute. Whole process finished, and as you can see, it took around 7 minutes, and it's pretty impressive if we go through the little steps and see what Claude did here. And in the summary we can read it. Postgres was created. We have the Postgres started here, version 18. We have the Germany region, and it's live accepting connections, and so on and so forth. And if we go back to our Sliplane account and we go into the databases section, we can see a new database appears right here. We can find connection strings, and right here in the metrics we can see what was going on, and we can see some activity. Something was uploaded, the database is spinning, and we can even see a bunch of queries that were ran on this database. So going back into our project, what we can do next is, I will say, deploy this data pipeline on Sliplane, and I want to run it on startup and every day at 1 a.m. for example. And now let's see if Claude can figure this out itself. As you might notice, I'm not using any advanced skills or anything. I'm just giving it a rough and high level prompt. I also don't add a bunch of details. I also don't write skills. I also don't do any of that, because these coding agents, they have become so good that Claude will basically figure out all of it itself. So fingers crossed. Let's see if it works or if it needs a little nudge here and there. I will let it run for a little while, and then I will come back and show you the results. So the agent finished, and it ran into two different issues. First of all, Docker. It correctly created a Docker file in the repository in order to package the little application in a Docker container. But in order to verify that the Docker file is correct, the container is running, it needed to start up Docker and run Docker. So you need to have Docker Desktop installed on your system so that the agent can verify what it creates here is correct. I already have Docker Desktop installed and running on my system, but in your case, you might need to download it from docker.com. I will go over to docker.com, and then right here, if I go to products, Docker Desktop, you can download Docker Desktop, install it on your system, run it, and then the agent can use this tool in order to verify if what it does right here is working. And the second issue, it tells us right here, blocked on the GitHub repo, Sliplane clones from a Git URL, and GitHub isn't installed here, so I cannot create the repo. So what we can either do is install the GitHub CLI, or you can go over to github.com, and then you can create a GitHub repo manually. If you click on new, then we give it a name, call this one analytics demo, for example. I will make it private, so only myself have access to this repository. I can create a repo, and then I will just say push an existing repository, copy the code, open a new terminal, paste in the code from GitHub, and if we run this, whoops, I need to run it again, then it will push the existing code over there. So I will just tell it, I now pushed the code to GitHub. So one thing that we also need to do is we need to grant Sliplane access to use this repository. So in Sliplane over here, you can find repository access. And then if we scroll down a little bit, I need to look for this analytics demo repository, and I need to grant Sliplane access to this repository. Now I have set it up now, but I was a little bit too late. Sliplane can't reach the repo. Let me determine whether it's private or access grant. And I will just interrupt Claude here, and then I say Sliplane now has access. I will hit return, and then let's see if Claude can get everything up and running. And after 3 more minutes, you can see everything is up and running. And if we go over to Sliplane in app runtime, we have a new folder, analytics demo, and we have a new project or a new application running in here. It was deployed successfully. We can check out the logs. We can see what is going on. And we now have our own data pipeline, which is pulling data from a data source, writing it into our data warehouse, which is right here in the database sections. And now we can run analytics on this data. And the great thing is the whole thing is here in code, and we can throw Claude on this. We can tell Claude to add new extractors, to add new tabs, to load it into different places, to run transformations, and to modify and shape the data, and even ask questions on the warehouse data. So one feature that we use a lot is we will ask questions on this warehouse data. So you would ask something like, my signups are declining. What can I do? What is the reason for this product to grow so fast? Why is this and that? And this is a really, really powerful tool, because Claude can crawl through all of that data, combine the data from different data sources, and then make sense of it. But one thing you need to keep in mind is do not store any private data in there. If you're running this data pipeline, always make sure to have some sanitization step, to have some cleanup, in order to not store personal data in there, because if you're running questions on that, you would send all of this data through Claude, and then it can get leaked somewhere. So this is a clear boundary where you should be very careful. But what you can do is you can have some anonymization step in between. You can crunch your data if you're pulling user analytics, just pull the user IDs, run some scrambling of these IDs or something. So it's really anonymized data that will be stored in the data warehouse, where you can run your quantitative analytics, and then you can ask questions using Claude. Now, if you want to have a look into your database, one thing that you can do is I will just create a new project right here, name this one PG admin, and then I click into the project and I will deploy a new app. Now, since this is just an example, I can also run it on the same server that we have already created, because it has a little bit of room left. So I will just pick the server right here from the list, click on next, and then I click on add service. On the top right, I will search for PG admin, and then I will just pick the PG admin preset from the list. I will click on add service, and then I click on deploy. And what this is going to do, it will install a version of pgadmin on this server, and then we can use pgadmin in order to inspect the data in our data warehouse. So we are running all kinds of queries and transformations, but maybe for debugging, you might want to have a look inside. You might want to have a visual preview. So we can just quickly spin up a pgadmin instance and then have a look into this data. Deploy was successful. I will open the app right here by clicking on this little arrow right here. I am redirected to the pgadmin interface. And if we go back into the app in Sliplane and scroll down a little bit, we can find the environment variables that were generated in order to connect to our pgadmin instance. I will copy the password. I can remember the email. Go back into pgadmin, admin@example.com, paste in the password, and then I will log in. And then I can add a new server. I will log into the Sliplane account, go to my database, and then I will scroll down to the connection details. I will give it a name, call this one data warehouse, for example. Then the connection details, I will copy the host name, I will copy the port, I will copy the database name, I will copy the username, and I will copy the password, right? Use SSL mode require for now. Then I will save that. I do not want to save this password, but I'm now connected to the Postgres data warehouse. And if I expand the databases view, I can see this analytics database. I can expand this view as well. And then right here in the schemas and tables, I can find my orders. So I can view the data, for example. Let's just view all of the rows. There are 250 rows. And we can see we have successfully imported all of this order data that was written into the example CSV by Claude. So the data pipeline is working, and as a last step, what we can do, similar to how we deployed pgadmin right here, we can also deploy an instance of Metabase. So I will create a new project, call this one Metabase, for example. I will enter the project, I will click on deploy app, will create a new server for Metabase. I will just name this one Metabase, and the starter server is probably a little bit too small. You could also try to fit Metabase onto the other server that we have already created, which is a little bit more resource efficient, but there is a small risk. Both are competing for the same resources. So if one project is broken or needs a lot of resources, the other one can suffer. So it's a little bit of a trade-off between saving money and running a more stable setup. In this case, I would recommend using a separate server. And since Metabase needs a bit more resources, I will use the base type right here. I will click on buy server. I will select the Metabase server. And I click on add service, search for Metabase, and then I will add Metabase to the server and click on deploy. Now the deploy of our Metabase instance probably only going to take a few seconds. You can watch the logs and see what is going on. It is currently pulling all of the layers onto the server and installing Metabase. So let's quickly wait until that is finished. After a couple of seconds, the preset was deployed successfully and we're hooked up with this public endpoint that we can use in order to access our app. And that's basically it. We can now get started with Metabase. And that's basically it for this tutorial. To recap what we did, we used Claude in order to spin up a data warehouse. Then we created a data pipeline with Meltano. We connected this data pipeline to our data warehouse, and then we spun up an instance of Metabase. And this is exactly the setup that you can see right here. So we're pulling data from different data sources, we're saving it in our data warehouse, then we can run some transformations and use Metabase in order to graph all of that. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up, comment, like, and subscribe, share it with your friends, and I see you next time.